So we are going to start with the front panel, and my first color choice, this is actually my base color because I have way more of this than I have of the rest. So you want to find one color or one yarn that you have more of, you're going to be needing more of, and then that is going to be your base, while the other two are just going to be like I don't know, the rest of it. So we're going to start with the front panel. For the front panel, you're going to divide your bust measurement by 2, or depending on how the fitting you're going for. If you want your cardigan to be fit, you're going to use that exact measurement, but I do not want mine to be fit, so I will be adding 5 inches to it. So usually my bust measurement is about 38 inches currently, and when I divide that by 2, I shall have a total of, let's see, that should leave me with a total of 19 inches. But again, like I said, I don't want this to be fitted because it's a cardigan, of course, so I will be adding 5 inches to that, so that will leave me with a total of 24 inches. So now I am about to just chain in multiple of 3 until I have 24 inches. For my front panel, I think I will be chaining 60, and I'm starting with a 3mm for this front panel, so I'm just going to chain in multiple of 3 until I have a total of 60 chains. So I have my 60 chains. From here on, we are going to go ahead and start the first row. And to get started with the first row, you are going to be skipping your very first 5 chains, sorry. So right here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and into the 6th I am going to insert a double crochet stitch. So I'm going to yarn over and insert a double crochet into that 6th chain. From here on, after the double crochet, I will be chaining 1, and I'm going to go back into that same stitch with another double crochet. So we're basically creating a V stitch for this row. So we have a double crochet, chain 1, and a double crochet. From here on, you are going to skip your next 3 chains. So 1, 2, 3, and into the 4th, you are going to yarn over and insert a double crochet. Right after, you're going to chain 1 and go right into that same stitch with another double crochet. From here on, you are going to go ahead and skip 3, 1, 2, 3, and into the 4th, you're going to insert your V stitch, which is a double crochet, chain 1, and a double crochet. And this is what you're going to repeat until you get to the very end of the chain. So I'll see you guys at the very end. And this is what you should have after the very end of the row. So right here we have 1, 2 more stitches, so we are going to go into the last chain with a double crochet to end of the row. And just like that, we just finished the first row. And for row 2, you're going to chain 3 and turn. And right into this very first double crochet stitch, we are going to be doing a front post double crochet. So you're going to yarn over, and to work a front post, you're going in and out of the stitch. So in, out, and you're going to grab the yarn and pull through. And when you have 3 loops, you're going to yarn over, pull through the first 2, and do the same thing for the last 2, because again it's a double crochet. The only difference is we are going with a front post. From there on, you are going to go into this your chain 1 space and insert 2 double crochets. So 1, 2 double crochets in there, and right after your 2 double crochets, you are going to chain 1 and insert another 2 sets of double crochets into that same chain 1 space. So you're going to insert 1, 2 double crochets into the chain 1 space. Right here, you're going to end off your shell by yarning over. We're going to do a front post into the last stitch. So remember, we did a front post into the very first, so we're going to do a front post into the last. So you're going to insert your crochet hook into that stitch. You're going to grab the yarn and pull through, and when you have 2 loops, you're going to yarn over and pull through 2 loops. But this is where we're going to do something different. Right here I have 2 more loops on my crochet hook. Usually you'll just yarn over and pull out the 2 loops, but because we are doing something different, you're going to yarn over, and instead of pulling through the rest of the 2 loops, you're going to go into this next V stitch. So we're kind of connecting this last double crochet with this very first double crochet onto this next V stitch. So you're going to yarn over and you're going to front post into that very first stitch in this next V stitch. You're going to grab the yarn and pull through, and at this point you have 4 loops. What you're going to do from here is you're going to yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops, and you should have 3. You're going to yarn over and pull through the last 2. Hopefully you guys understand what I mean by that. So from here on, you're going to into the chain 1, just the same thing we did at the very first V stitch. You're going to insert 2 double crochets, 1, 2, chain 1, and insert 2 more double crochets into the V stitch, 1, 2, and to finish the shell you're going to do a front post into this next double crochet. So you're going to yarn over, go in and out, grab the yarn and pull through. You have 3 loops, you're going to yarn over and pull through the first 2, and when you have these 2, you're going to combine this into that stitch. So you're going to yarn over, do a front post on this next double crochet, grab the yarn and pull through. When you have 4 loops, you're going to yarn over, pull through the first 2. You should have 3. You're going to yarn over and pull through the last 2. And that is honestly what the pattern is made up of. So you want to make sure whenever you're finishing off a set of shell, you're going to combine the very last double crochet with the very first double crochet on the opposite V stitch. So from here on, because I just did a front post, I'm going to insert 2 double crochets into my chain 1 space, chain 1, and an additional 2 double crochets all into that same very space. And from there on, I'm going to end off the shell by doing a front post, and when I have the 2 loops, I'm going to yarn over and make sure I attach this next double crochet with a front post as well, and voila, we have the rows. So you're going to repeat this until you get to the very last V stitch, and I'll see you guys and show you how to end off the row. Here I am coming to the very end of the row. So at the beginning of the row, we did a front post into the very first stitch, and to end off the last V stitch, we are also going to do a front post. So you're going to yarn over and do a front post into that very last stitch before your chain 3 space, and just like that, you just completed your last V stitch, and your pattern should look like this. To end off the row, you're going to go into your chain 3 on top of the very top chain. So right into the very top chain, you are going to insert a double crochet, just the same way we did at the very beginning, and we just finished the very first set. From here on, you are going to chain 3, and we're going to basically repeat row 1. The pattern is a repetition of row 1 and row 2. So after chaining 3, we are going to go into this chain 1 space with a V stitch. So you're going to insert a double crochet, a chain 1, and a double crochet all into that chain 1 space. From there on, you're going to yarn over, and into this next chain 1 space, you are going to do the same by inserting a double crochet, a chain 1, and a double crochet. And again, like I said, this is just the same exact pattern as row 1. The only difference, we are going to do this in a chain 1 space because we already have a foundation. So you're just going to repeat this until you get to the very end of the row. A double crochet, chain 1, a double crochet, all the way to the very end. So to end of the row, we are going to go ahead and double crochet into the top chain in this chain 3 space. So you're going to yarn over and go into your very top chain. You want to make sure you're inserting the double crochet into the very top chain, and you should have something like this at the end of your row. Hey guys, so I just finished my first color, my 2 sets of shells. So I'm going to switch to my second color option, which for me is this light blue, but it can be whatever color you want this to be. I just want my sweater, my cardigan to be different shades of blue. So I am going to show you guys how I'm going to switch to the next color. So I'm just going to cut off the yarn, not a very long cut, just something long enough, this amount. From here on, I am going to go back into that last double crochet, and when I have the 2 loops, I'm going to grab the new yarn and I'm going to use that to end off the row. And from here on, I will be chaining 3. And I'm just going to turn and I repeat row 1, which is a double crochet into the chain 1 space, chain 1 and a double crochet into that same space. And I'm honestly just going to repeat this for 2 more sets of shells, or you definitely can play with this pattern. Instead of doing 2, you can do 3 or even 1 per color, depending on how much yarn you have and however you want to play with this pattern, guys, you can do so. But I will be doing 2 sets of each color, and then from here on I'm going to switch to the next color. So that's honestly what the pattern is about. So guys, because of the way the pattern is worked and it's a shell and mesh, it's difficult for you to sew in your loose end as you go, but I want to show you guys one that I used. So right here I have 2 loose ends, and I'm actually coming to the very end of the row. The reason why I couldn't sew anything was because the previous row was a chain 1 or double crochet chain 1 space, so it's super difficult for you to do that. But I will be using this one to show you guys what I'm going to do now. So I just did my first front post into this last V-stitch, so I'm going to grab the end of this yarn and I'm going to pass this underneath. This is going to help save time later on when you finish and want to sew in your loose ends. So when I pass the underneath, I am now going to work my double crochet, my 2 double crochets right on top. So you see that my crochet hook is going underneath, which means the chain is being secure, the yarn is being secure actually. So I'm going to chain 1 and work the 2 more double crochets into that same space, and I'm going to do my front post, just the same exact step, and then my last double crochet into that chain 3 to end off the row. And just like that, I have this yarn secure. See? And I can just go ahead and cut this off now. So this is what I am looking. This is what it's looking like. So I'm just gonna repeat this exact thing, I think for a total of 6. Total of 2, 4, 6, 12. A total of 12 sets. So I have 2, I have 3 complete. I'm going to do another additional 9 sets, and I'll see you guys when it's complete, because we are going to be doing something different. Hey guys, so I just finished my 12 sets. So again, 2 for each color, and it's currently 11 inches, and this is actually the measurement from wherever I want my cardigan to stop up until my armpit area, because now we're going to do decreasing around one side of the panel, which is going to decrease all the way up from the armpit all the way to the shoulders. So now I'm going to switch back to my next color. And we are going to just start the row by chaining 3. And I am going to just repeat the exact pattern, which is the V-stitch pattern, until I get to the very end, because we are going to be decreasing at the end. So coming to the end of the row, we have the last shell before the chain 3. Because we're decreasing, we're basically just going to reduce the amount of V-stitch we have, and that is going to be 1 increase. So if we add, let's say for example, if I add 10, I have to make sure I reduce that to 9 for the next row. So what I'm going to do to reduce it, it's this last one. I will be just skipping this, but I cannot skip this entire shell and go into the chain 3 space with a double crochet, because then I'm going to have a super wide gap between this last V stitch and this chain 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to insert a double crochet into this. So what I'm doing is I'm going to go in there, and when I have 3 loops, I will attach that to the chain 3. So I'm like kind of connecting the chain 3 into this chain 1 space to make my double crochet that is going to end off the row. And right here I just ended off the row, so which means automatically I have 1 less V stitch, and that is going to be the decrease pattern. And also from here on you're going to chain 3, and because we already decreased a V stitch, we are not decreasing for this next row, because we're just going to build up the shell on top of the V stitch that we have, the amount of V stitch that we have now. We already we already what's the word, we already have 1 less, which already gives us a decrease, so we don't have to do any decreasing for this next step. So you're going to yarn over and just repeat the exact pattern, which is a front post, a 2 double crochet into the chain 1, a chain 1 and a 2 double crochet into that same chain 1 space. So that is honestly what the decreasing pattern is about. You are just going to reduce 1 V stitch when you're working row 1 for a total of 4 sets. So I'm doing this for 2 sets, so 4 sets. So 1 more for this color, and I'm going to switch to this blue, and I'm going to do that for a total of 2 sets. But when I'm switching back to this other blue, I'm not going to decrease anymore. So we're just decreasing for 2 sets. I will just stop with the decreasing, and I'm just going to repeat that without any decreasing. Hopefully that makes sense. And your final front panel should look something like this. So after your 4 sets of decreasing, so you guys can see this is where I started with the decreasing with this blue, and then I did continue up until this blue, and from this blue I stopped decreasing. So right there I have like this thing that goes on. So you're going to do the exact same step for your opposite front panel for a total of 12 sets, and we're going to do decreasing again. The only difference is because the 2 sides of the panel look different, the decreasing will be done at the beginning of the row. With the panel that I just showed you guys, the decreasing was done at the end of the row. Decreasing was done at the end of the row, but for the other panel you want to make sure that the decreasing is done at the beginning of the row. So when you lay this, you want to have the decreasing on this side and then the decreasing on the other side. You don't want the decreasing to be, both of them to be on the left. You want one to be on the left and one to be on the right, because then that's how your shoulder panel is worked. So I'm going to just repeat the 12 rows for the front, for the opposite front panel, and I'll show you guys how you can do the decreasing at the beginning of the row, because I already showed you how to do it at the end of the row. So for the decreasing for the beginning of the row, you are going to grab your new yarn and just attach that just the same way you would if you want to start a normal row. So from here on, usually we would chain 3, but because we're decreasing at the beginning of this row now, we will not be chaining 3. So you're just going to turn, and into this very first chain 1, you're going to insert a double crochet. Again, just like the opposite panel that we made, we want to just reduce the amount of V-stitch we're about to create for this row. So instead of, let's say for example, instead of 10, we want to make sure we have 9. And for us to do that, we're not chaining anything. We're going to, the chain 3 again is a double crochet, right? So we're going to just work a double crochet into this chain 1 space, and this automatically gives us 1 less V-stitch, because we will be, instead of working a V-stitch into this chain 1, we are doing a double crochet instead. And right into this next is where we're going to work a V-stitch, so we automatically have 1 less V-stitch. So into the chain 1, you are going to insert your V-stitch. right there, and then from there you're just going to repeat the same pattern, which is a V-stitch into every chain 1 until you get to the very end of the row. And again, for this one we're only decreasing on one side, and this is going to be the centerpiece, which means we're not decreasing on this side, while for the other one we decreased on this side but we're not decreasing on this side. And so because we are not decreasing on the side, you still want to make sure you're ending off your row with a double crochet, and you're going to chain 3, and now you're just going to turn and work your shell pattern until you get to the very edge, where we're going to just do the same thing. So we're not decreasing again, just the same way we worked the other panel. When you're working your shell row, which is row 2, you will not be decreasing. The only decrease you'll be doing is for row 1, because reducing the amount of V-stitch already decreases the amount of shell you're going to work, so that just makes it easy. So I'm just going to repeat this until I get to the very end. And this brings me to the end of the row, so we are going to now go ahead and turn, because we're decreasing again for this next row. And for this next row, just the same thing we did for the very first, you're going to go into this very first chain 1 with the double crochet, and that is your first decrease. And from there you're going to just start working a V-stitch into the next and the rest of the chain 1 space. And guys, this is what you're going to do. So this is going to be my second decrease, and I'm going to do this for 2 more decreases. So with this next color, I'm going to be decreasing for the two sets, and then right after I'll show you guys what it looks like. So to know exactly how wide you need to make your back panel, you're going to be taking the 2 measurements of your front panel and add that together, and you're going to add an additional 5 inches to that amount of inches that you have. And right after, you're just going to chain in multiple of 3 until you have your desired length before we started decreasing. So remember, for the front panel I did a total of 12 sets before I started decreasing, and you can see now on my back panel I still have the same amount of 12 set. Again, a set is literally just row 1 and row 2 together, so keep that in mind. So you're going to just do that. The 5 inches we're adding is going to be the gap for the neck area, because it's a cardigan, so when you attach the 2 front panels you still need a gap around the back panel so you can fit your neck into it. So do that, and I'll see you guys in the next clip, because we're going to be decreasing on the back panel as well, but this time around we're doing it on both sides because we want to make sure we align that to the front panel later on in the video. So now we are going to go ahead and decrease on the 2 sides of the back panel. I already showed you guys in the previous clips how to do a decreasing at the beginning and at the end of the row, but I just want to show you guys what it looks like in this clip. So right there, I'm switching back to my next color, which is this dark blue, and I am going to, you can see that I'm just really trying to get my new yarn to the crochet hook before I start. And again, it's the same exact step, just the same way I showed you guys in the front panel. So when I'm decreasing, I'm not chaining anything. I will just be going into the very first chain 1 because I want to still reduce the amount of V-stitch that I will be creating in this row. And because I will be decreasing twice, so this time around I want to make sure I'm reducing 2 V-stitch from this row instead of 1, because I will be decreasing at the very beginning and at the very end of the row. So right there I will be skipping that very first chain 3 space, and I'm going to go into the chain 1 with a double crochet, and right after I will be going into the next chain 1 space with my first V-stitch, and then from there on I will just be working a V-stitch until I get to the very end where I will be decreasing again. It's the same exact step, so the way you decreased at the beginning, it's the same exact way you're going to decrease at the end. You just want to make sure that you're doing your decrease twice, because you want to make sure you balance your front panel, your back panel that you're working now with your front panel. So you want to reduce the same amount, or double the amount of rows or the amount of shells that you're decreasing at the front. Hopefully that makes sense. So right here I am at the end of the first row, and I'm going to go ahead and decrease that last V-stitch, that last shell stitch to the double crochet. And again, I'm using the same exact step. I will be just going into that chain 1 space, and I me, I'm going to attach that chain 1 space with the chain 3 space, because if you skip that, you're going to have a gap and you don't want the gap. So you're going to do the exact same thing that you did for your front panel, and I'll show you guys the final look so we can attach the front and the back panel together. Hey guys, so now that you have your front and your back panel complete, we are going to attach the two of them together right before we start working on the sleeve. So you're going to align your panels, making sure that the right side, because again the stitches have two different sides, you want to make sure that the right side of the back panel is actually facing you while the wrong side is on the table. And then you're going to grab the front panel and make sure that the right side of the panel is laying across the right side of the back panel. So I'm just going to grab the yarn and I'm going to attach that to the edge of both ends of the panels. So into this very first stitch on the front panel and into the very first stitch on the back panel, I will be attaching those two with the knot. And I'm just carefully going to just single crochet each stitch to each stitch on the opposite panel. You can also use a needle for this method or a slip stitch. I just prefer to use a single crochet for this. So you can see that I'm just carefully single crocheting the shoulders of the front panel to the back panel, and I'm just going to make my way up until I get to the very end where the shoulders actually ends. So I just single crocheted the one shoulder to the panel, and you guys can see that it looks flawless. So the seam has to align with the seam on the necks and also the seam on the side, which you guys will later on do. But this is what it looks like. I still need to do the opposite side, so I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll show you guys what the next step is. So you're going to do the same exact step. When you have two of the shoulders of the front panel attached to the back panel, you can now decide how wide you want the armpit hole to be. Or what we can do is just leave this for now and start working on the sleeve, because when we have the sleeve, then we can easily just align that to the shoulders, because we still have everything opened, and then we don't have to do any readjustment. So fold this to the side and grab a new yarn so we can start working on the sleeve. So the sleeve and the back panel are the exact same step. The only difference is lengthwise and widthwise, because my sleeve is obviously not going to be super wide. I chained a total of 75 for my sleeve, and that did leave me with I think about 21 inches if I'm not mistaken. And for rows, I ended up doing, instead of doing 12 sets, I ended up doing I think 15. So I have in total I have 3 sets of colors. So for the back and the front panel I had 2 before I started decreasing, but for the sleeve I have 3, and the reason is because my sleeve, the full length for my sleeve is 24 inches, while the full length for my front and back panel was 18 inches. So you can tell there's a 6 inches difference on both sides. So right there you can also see that I did ended up using that main blue for the rest of the sleeve, because I ran out of yarn and I couldn't, the website do not have the blue available anymore, so I just decided to stick to that because I had more of that. But we're doing the same decreasing. So right there you can see that there's a decreasing that goes all the way up. This is where the pattern comes a little bit more complicated, because depending on the size you're making for the sleeve, you might probably have to do a decreasing, your decreasing different than what I did. But just to chain the same amount of chains that you want to chain, making sure that you're chaining a multiple of 3 for your desired sleeve width, and then you are going to just do a few rows of the pattern until you have a total of 3 sets of colors, just like that. And then I'll see you guys and show you guys the next step, because if I explain everything now, it's going to be too much information. So I did say that the front and the back panel are similar. So right there you can see that I just finished with blue, and I started decreasing already, and for this first few rows I will be decreasing with just one decrease, but you guys will see the difference at the very top. So for the front and the back panel, what we did was, after that last set of blue, before we start another set of color changing, I did a decreasing, right? But you guys remember that I only did decreasing for 4 sets. But for the sleeve, we are going to be decreasing all the way to the very top. So it's going to be different from the front panel and the back panel, because we only did 4 sets of decreasing, while on the sleeve we want to decrease all the way to the very top, and that is going to just leave us with a very curvy area that we will later on attach to the front and the back panel. So if you're still keeping up with the same color pattern, this time around you can go and switch to your next color, but because I will be using this color for the rest of the sleeve, I am just going to reattach the excess yarn to the working panel so I can start with my next row. But after my 2 sets, I should have switched to a different color, but again I'm sticking to this color. So right there you see I am going to do my next decrease, which is me going into that chain 1 space with a double crochet, and I am going to then go ahead and start working the V-stitch into the next chain 1 space, and repeat that until the very end, guys. It's the same exact pattern as the back panel. You are decreasing at the beginning and at the end of the row until you have a total of 6 sets of decreasing. So now I have 2, which means I still need to do 4 more. So I'm going to repeat 4 more, and the 4 more is going to just be the same length as it's going to be about 22 inches, but because my sleeve is 24 inches, I do eventually have to add the amount of rows that I did. So right here I am coming to the 6 decrease. Again, for the front panel and the back panel we did 4, but for the sleeve we have 6. So you can see that it's 22 inches, but my desired sleeve length is 24 inches. So I still have 2 more inches to add. And also, if you count the amount of rows that we have on the front and the back panel, from the decrease area upwards, you can tell that we need 2 more sets of rows. So we actually need 2 more color. But because I'm still using the word color, so it kind of looks different, and it's also difficult for you guys to see, but I actually need 2 more sets. So right there you can see that I have 6 shells. Again, the goal is to reduce the amount of shells into 1 or even nothing at all if it's possible. But because this is crochet and this is not sewing, it's going to be super difficult because we're not cutting anything. With sewing, you can easily just get a scissors and cut this to make it smaller, so you can fit this around the armpit area or around the sleeve on the front and the back panel. But we are going to do something different, something I don't even think it's normal to do in crocheting, but either way it works for me. We are going to be double decreasing the amount of stitches we have. So remember, for the entire pattern since we've started, we've only done 1 decreasing, but because I only have 2 more sets to get done before I end off the entire row, I want to double decrease. So instead of decreasing 2 shells on each row, we are going to be decreasing 4. So we're going to double the amount of decreasing that we are doing. Again, if you are making this for a size bigger, then you kind of need to do this beforehand. You have to double decrease beforehand. So the last 6 decreasing that I just did was just a single decreasing, but if you're making a size bigger, you can do a double decreasing on that side. And if you're making a size smaller, you probably don't have to do the double decreasing because everything has already been done, and because your panel is smaller, you kind of at this point have less shells than I do. I currently have 6. Maybe you have 2, maybe you have 4, depending on the amount you have. You're going to just decrease depending on that. Again, I'm making this pattern as I go, which means I've never made this pattern before. And I'm literally just figuring everything out while I make this tutorial for you guys. So if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me and I will make time to answer your questions, because I know this is not easy. This is not an easy pattern. I struggled with it, especially with the sleeve. but I'm also going to take my time to write the written pattern, which will be available on my Etsy store with all the details for different sizes. So if you want to make everything easy for you, then you can go ahead and buy the pattern from me, and also support me in the little way you can. So right there, I'm going to start with my double decreasing. So into that very first shell, chain 1 space, I would usually go in there with a double crochet, right, which already tells that I'm decreasing 1 stitch. But because I want to decrease 2 at the one time, you are going to yarn over and go into that chain 1 space, and then from there you're going to grab the yarn. You're acting like you're making a double crochet. So when you have 3 loops, you are now going to go into the next chain 1 space, which automatically gives you, because you just want to combine those 2 shells and make them one. So that's what double decreasing is. So now I have 4 loops. I am going to yarn over and pull through the first 2, and when I have 3 loops, I am going to pull through the next 2, and lastly going to yarn over and pull through the last 2, and that stitch right there is going to be our first double crochet stitch. Again, this is not something I would usually do, but I have to do what I have to do, honestly. From there on, I am going to be working a V stitch because I already decreased at the very beginning. So into the next chain 1 space, which is that, I am going to insert a V stitch, which is a double crochet, chain 1 and a double crochet into that stitch. And from there on, I have 3 more shells, but because I only need to decrease 2 at the very end, that means I can still go into that next shell with a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, which is a V stitch in this pattern. And then from there on, I'm going to do the exact same thing I did at the very beginning, which is decreasing those 2 shells so I can have 1. So I'm going to yarn over, go into the first chain 1 space, and when I have 3 loops, I am going to insert that into the next chain 1 space, and I'm going to pull through. But remember that we have a chain 3 at the end. We do not want to skip that because we want to combine that to the double crochet stitch we're about to create. So you're now going to go into the chain 3 and you're going to pull through, and now you have a random amount. So you're just going to yarn over, pull through the first 2 or first 3, whatever you can do, and pull through the next and pull through the next. So the stitch does not look like a double crochet, but we are going to pretend as if that's a double crochet. And from there on, you're just going to turn and chain a 3 because we're going to be working the shell row, which is just going above the previous row with a shell or a double crochet, whatever you need to do, the exact same thing. You know, we are not decreasing when we're working row 2, which is a shell row. We are only decreasing when we're working row 1, which is the V stitch row. So if you have a V stitch, you're going to just insert your shell into that, which is a front post, 2 double crochets into the chain 1, and 2 double crochets. And when you get into the next, you're going to just make sure that you combine the very first stitch and the last stitch together, just so you can have your second shell. So you guys can see that now I only have 2 shells, which is good, but I want to still reduce that to 1, and I also still have 1 more set that I need to do, which is going to make it super easy for me. I should have had 3, counting from the amount of rows that I had or the amount of shells I had at the very beginning, but I don't know, for some reason I ended up with 2 on the sleeve, but the other one I had 3. So if you have 2, it's fine. If you have 3, it's fine. This is honestly just you just have to play around with this pattern, guys. At one point I just did not want to upload this video, but I just thought, you know what, I'll find a way to explain this. So again, I know it's not the easiest thing. So you can see that for the last shell that I need to create, I have only 2 shells. My goal is to make sure I have 1 at the very end, so I am going to just chain 3. The reason why I'm chaining 3 at this point is because instead of 3, I have 2 shells. So we are going to go into that very first chain 1 space. Right there, I am going to go there with a double crochet. I'm gonna go in there with a double crochet. If I had 3, I would have skipped the chain 3 I did at the beginning, but because I have 2, I am going to go there with a double crochet, chain 1, and I'm going to go into the next shell with a double crochet, and that gives me like a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. like a V-stitch, even though it's not in the same space. I just pretended, I just wanted to pretend that's a V-stitch because that's the only way I could get one shell for the final row. So right there we have like a double crochet, a double crochet, chain one, double crochet, and then a double crochet to end of the row. So from there on you are going to do the shell row, which is just a chain 3 and turn. And the chain 3 is a double crochet, so which means into that chain 1 space, that is where you're going to work your shells. So you're going to go into the next double crochet with a front post, and then you're going to go into the chain 1 with 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets, and you're lastly going to go into the next double crochet with a front post. And to end of the row, you're going to go into this chain 3 space with a double crochet. And that honestly leaves you with one shell. I really hope you guys find this, I was able to explain this enough for you guys to understand that you just have to decrease, just play around with the decrease until you have one shell. 1 or 2 or even less. You just need less. If you're making a size bigger, maybe like 2 instead of 1, but if you're making a size smaller, then you don't have to do this. So you guys can see that it's currently 24 inches, which is the perfect length. So you just want to play around with the decrease area until you have your desired length. Now you can grab your front and your back panel so we can attach the sleeve together. Remember, I did say we should leave it open just so if we have to do any readjustment, we can easily do that before we attach the sleeve. And you also want to keep in mind that the sleeve also has a good and a wrong side, and while you're attaching that together, you want to make sure that you're aligning the good sides of the front and the back panel to the good side of the sleeves, while the bad side is going to be aligned to the back side of the sleeves as well. So right there, I'm just going to lay my panel flat and I'm going to show you guys what the panel looks like. This is a bit more complicated as well because of the different colors we use. So at one point you kind of need to go back and forth with your color choices or with your color changing when you are attaching the sleeve to the panels. So I would suggest to use a needle for this, but I ended up using a single crochet because that's just what I always use. I'm not really big on using needles to attach my pieces. But yeah, you can see that the decreasing that we did around the sleeve was just so it can easily perfectly fit around the decreasing we did around the front and the back panel. You can see just me aligning those two together. So where the blue on the panels actually starts has to align with the blue on this other side of the panel, and that is just easily going to be a guide for you to know that from the very top you have to single crochet all the way to the very end of the decreasing, and you do the same thing on the other side to the back panel, while the other one is going to be done on the side of the front panel. So you're going to go into the yarn. I still have my yarn attached to the sleeve. I will just attach the crochet hook into that, and I'm going to make a loop, and I will just go ahead and single crochet the first half of the decrease area. So we have two decrease areas. So the first half is going to be single crochet to the front panel, and then the other half is going to be single crochet to the back panel. But again, you want to make sure that that second shade of blue aligns with the second shade of blue on the panel. So from the decrease area on the sleeve to the very top is the same amount of rows from the decrease area on the panels, the front and the back panel, all the way to the top. The only difference is on the sleeve we have more rows going downwards, that is after the decreasing, but before or upwards it's the same amount of rows. That's what you actually need to keep in mind. So right there, I'm just going to carefully single crochet each ends of the panel, making sure I'm checking the length and checking to make sure that the blue on the decreasing on the sleeve aligns with the decreasing on the panel perfectly. So you're going to just single crochet until you get to the very end. So this is what my panel looks like after single crocheting the first side of decreasing to the front panel, and you can see that the back is still open because I haven't actually single crochet the other side. So you want to single crochet one side first so you can have an idea of how the pattern works before you do the opposite side. So right there, I am going to now reattach my yarn at the very top, and I will do the same exact step by single crocheting the decrease area to the decrease area. But you can see that the blue right before the decrease on the sleeve aligns with the blue on the panel, and that's actually what the guide is. So you want to make sure you keep that in mind. So I'm just going to reattach my yarn at the very top, and I'm going to also single crochet that sleeve to the back panel, because at this point that's the back panel, until I get to that edge as well where the decreasing stops. So the decreasing always has to align with the decreasing on the sleeve, and that's the way you're going to have everything to fit the way it should. So right there, my sleeve is complete. Well, not entirely complete, but I already attached the decrease area to the back and the front panel. So you can already see that the decreasing around the sleeve should align like this. And also the blue, you have to make sure that you're aligning your decreasing, because it's the same amount of decrease, guys, the same amount of length. The length is the exact same thing, so it should fit perfectly. But the sides of the panel and the sides of the sleeve are still open. So now you are going to just single crochet the sides together. Again, this is what I mean by you kind of have to go back and forth with the color options if you want this to look flawless. And so what I did was I was just switching back and forth with my color options and attaching that together with a single crochet. But you can use a needle for that, you can use a slip stitch, but you just are going to single crochet the two ends of the front and the back panel, the two sides together, and you're going to single crochet the two sides of the sleeve together. At the end, you are going to have already have a lot of loose ends that I need to sew in and cut off. So I'm just going to get that done, and I'll show you guys what the sleeve looks like before I do the opposite side. And right here, this is what my sleeve looks like. I did sew in and cut off the loose ends on that side. You can see that the sleeve does align with the sleeve around the armpit area, around the leg, the back and the front panel good. And you can also see that I did take my time to switch back and forth with the colors, which makes everything seamless. I know it's a lot of time, but you have to do, especially if you're making this for someone, I would suggest you do that, because I did attempt to use one yarn color for the attachment and I didn't like the way it looked so tacky. So I would really suggest you take your time and just sew in those, take your time and switch back and forth with the colors. And I wanted to mention that you can see that the blue, what blue is that? I don't even know the shade of blue that is, but it does align with the shade on the sleeve, and that was the goal. So you want to make sure after the upper part, after the decrease area, the rest of the colors do align together all the way to the very end. I'm just going to repeat the same exact step on the opposite sleeve, and then I'll show you guys how to work the collar, because that's the last step. So I just finished a single crocheting or attaching the two sleeves together. We are now going to go ahead and add a collar to it. You don't have to do this step if you don't want to. I just thought I would love it way more if I add a collar to it. And of course, I'm going to be using my main color for this, and that is going to be this dark blue that you guys have already seen me using. For that, you're going to decide how deep you want that to be. I think mine is going to end right before my second set of colors, so that is where I will be attaching my yarn. And of course, it's going to be worked from one side to the opposite side, and we're going to go back and forth with that until we have a desired measurement. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab the yarn and attach that with a secure knot to the side. You can make this longer if you want to, but I would suggest you just stick to that length onto that color. So I'm going to attach the yarn with a secure knot, and I'm going to single crochet my way up until I get to the opposite side. So right into that very first stitch, I am going to go ahead and grab the yarn so I can have a loop, and then I'm going to chain one, and I will be single crocheting into every available space around this area, so around the shoulders all the way up to the neck and up until the opposite side. I cannot count or tell you guys how many stitches you should do, because this is just based on how much availability you have on your pattern. So you're just going to carefully single crochet into every available space. You want to make sure that you are not adding way more than you need, and also you're not skipping any stitch. So you're still going to carefully insert one stitch at a time, making sure you're not skipping anything, but at the same time you are not adding two into one available space. And that is what I'm going to do until I get to the opposite side of the other blue, and then I'll see you guys at the end. And right here I'm at the end. I am going to go ahead and chain one and turn, so you can see that the blue actually ends the same exact step, the exact same place. I'm now going to chain one, and I will be going into the very first stitch with half double crochet stitch. I wanted to use a slip stitch for this, but I just thought that was going to cost way more time. I've already spent so much time on this cardigan. I've been working on this for almost 2 weeks. That's how long it's been. So I wanted to do a slip stitch first. You guys can see that I'm doing a slip stitch there, but I did later on go back and take that entire thing out and started doing a half double crochet instead. So right there I'm going to yarn over and go into the back loop with a half double crochet stitch, and I'm going to just go ahead and repeat one half double crochet until I get to the very beginning of the row, end of the row, sorry. And for this next row, your double crochet should look like that. For the next row, we are going to be doing a increase, but you still want to chain one, so you're going to chain one and turn, and right into your very first half double crochet stitch, you are going to insert two half double crochet stitch into the back loop of that stitch. So you want to yarn over and go into the back loop with one, and go back into that same loop with an additional double crochet, half double crochet, and you are going to repeat one half double crochet until you get to the very end. And this is what I did for a total of 7 rows, but I want to make sure that I'm increasing at the beginning and I'm increasing at the end of the row. So this is what 7 rows look like. Again, you're just increasing so you can make the edge of the collar wider. So at the very beginning you're inserting 2, which means at the very end you're going to insert 2 as well. So when you flip this over, you should have something like this. I did a total of 7 rows for reference, so you can just do more or do less, or you can skip the entire process, honestly, if you don't want to do that. So that's it. I'll see you guys in the next tutorial.